Okay, so today's lesson we're going to be looking at the circumference of a circle. Before we start that, can you see how many parts of this circle you can remember from last lesson? The words are at the bottom there. You need to put them in the right place. So give yourself some time, pause the video and see if you can name all the parts of the circle. Okay, here are the answers. So mark your work and then we can move on. So first, let's remind ourselves what the circumference of a circle is. So in the starter, you should have seen that the circumference was all the way around the circle. So it's like the perimeter of a shape, but it's got a special name for a circle. We call it the circumference. So that red dashed line all the way around the circle. Okay, so now we know what the circumference is. How do we work it out? So here's the formula. Circumference equals pi times d. D standing for the diameter. Thinking about the units, remember circumference is a perimeter, so that's a distance, and therefore the units will look something like this. Millimeters, centimeters, meters, kilometers. They're just a few examples. So we're going to get stuck in straight away. Let's have a look at this example here. I've got to find the circumference of the circle. So let's do like last lesson. That's every single time we have a question to do with circles, we're going to write radius equals diameter equals. Well, I've got from one side of the circle to the other side of the circle, so that's the diameter. I'm going to write the diameter is 10 centimeters, and just to make sure we know how to do it, radius, remember, is going to be half that length. We won't necessarily need the radius, but it's good to get into that routine. Right, this time we've got the circumference, which I'm going to put as C, is the same as pi times the diameter. Okay, so I'm trying to find the circumference. I'm going to continue writing pi for now, but I'm now going to insert, instead of writing D, I'm going to have a look at this little bit I've written here. We're going to replace the letter D, diameter, with the number 10, because I know the diameter is 10. At this point now we can plug it into our calculator. If you haven't got a calculator, remember we can use pi to be 3.14. So if you haven't got a calculator and you're just going to use your phone, you can use pi to be 3.14. 3.14 times by 10, that's going to give us 31.4. And remember, the units are centimeters because it's a distance around the outside of the circle. Okay. Here's one which is very similar, so just pause the video and have a go at this one. Okay, so I'm going to now show us how we should do this one so you can mark your answer. Okay, so we're always going to be in the routine of writing what's the radius, what's the diameter. So again, we're shown the diameter because it goes all the way across, so I can fill that in as 8. And I know the radius is half that because it goes from the middle to the end. We're looking for the circumference, so let's write out that formula, pi times diameter, and let's have a look back at what we've written at the start here. The diameter is 8 centimeters, so I'm going to write circumference equals pi times, well, the diameter is 8 centimeters, so I'm going to write 8 instead of the D. From this point here, we're going to put it into our calculator, so remember you're going to put pi if you've got a calculator, or you're going to put 3.14 if you're using your phone. That gives us an answer of 25.12, and that again is centimeters. The diameter is in centimeters, so the circumference, which is the length, is also going to be in centimeters. Okay, another example looks very similar but slightly different. This time we're given the radius, aren't we? So as always, let's write radius equals diameter equals and fill in the bits we know. It goes from the mid-center of the circle to the ends, so that's the radius, so I can put that in as 6. And diameter is all the way across, so it's going to be double 6, it's going to be 12. Brilliant. So whenever we see a circle question, we're always going to do this. Circumference equals pi times diameter. Let's write that formula out again, and we're going to fill in the bits we know. Well, we know the diameter now. We've worked it out to be 12. So I'm replacing diameter with the number 12. And then we're plugging into our calculator 12 times 3.14, and that gives me an answer of 37.68. Don't forget the units that needs to go here. I'll have a look back at the question. It's in meters, so therefore the circumference is in meters because it's just a length all the way around the outside of the circle. Again, it's now your turn, so pause the video, have a go at this question, and then we'll go through the answer to make sure you've got it right. Okay, brilliant. So make sure you're showing every step of the workings. Let's see how you got on. As always, let's write out those two things. The radius this time we're given is 3 meters, and the diameter is going to be double that because it's got to go all the way across. So it's going to be 6 meters. Okay, write out the formula. It wants the circumference, so we're finding the circumference equals pi times the diameter, and we fill in the bits that we know. We know the diameter is 6 meters. Once we get to this stage, remember we just plug it into our calculator, so just type it in, and you should have got an answer of 18.84. Don't forget the units. The question has meters, so therefore my circumference is 18.84 meters. Really well done if you've got that. Okay, so we've had a few practice goes. Now it's your turn to have a go at all of these questions. Don't be put off by some of the units. Here we've got yards, but you do exactly the same thing. Notice this bit here, give your answers to 1 decimal place. So if you are using a calculator to put pi in, round your answers to 1 decimal place. Okay, just so you can check that you're getting your answers right, I'm going to do the solution to question 1, so you can check you're doing it right and you can carry on with the next few questions. Okay, so again, radius equals diameter equals, let's have a look what we've got. This length here, 2 centimeters, is from one side to the other side, so I know that's the diameter that's going to go here. And the radius is going to be half that, so half of 2 is 1. Circumference equals pi times the diameter. The diameter I've written just above is 2 centimeters, so I've replaced diameter with the number 2, and then we plug it into our calculator. So pi, or 3.14, times by 2 gives me 6.28. Remember I said to round to 1 decimal place, so 1 decimal place is here, so is that 8 above 5? Yes, so I'm going to round up. We should get 6.3, and don't forget the units, centimeters. Okay, so make sure you're giving your answer to 1 decimal place each time. Brilliant, now carry on with the rest of the questions, and on the next slide we've got the answers. Okay, so this question is now putting it into context, so a real life situation. If you found the previous questions a little bit tricky, move forward to the next bit. But if you want a bit of a challenge, so those people aiming for sort of silver and gold, you can have a go at this one. Pause the video, have a go, and then we'll go through the solution together. Okay, so we're given that the diameter of a bicycle wheel is 50 centimeters. So I'm going to write that down. Diameter equals 50 centimeters. How many complete rotations? That means how many times the wheel goes fully round one circle, so does one full turn over 3 kilometers. Okay, so the bike's going to travel 3 kilometers. Let's say that's 3 kilometers, and we've got to find out how many times that wheel is going to make a full rotation, so go all the way around over that distance. Well, this red line here that I've just drawn, that's the circumference, isn't it? All the way around the circle. So it's going to be helpful to work out that circumference. So let's do that first. Writing out the formula and plugging in the bits we know. We know diameter is 50, so I'm going to put that in there. And I'm going to then put that into my calculator. 50 times pi, or 50 times 3.14, and that gives me 157. Remembering the units, centimeters. Okay, So I know that one turn or one rotation of that wheel equals 157 centimeters. And I need to know how many of those 157 centimeters fit into 3 kilometers. Well, the first thing I need to be careful of is this is in centimeters and this is in kilometers. So I need to change them to be the same thing. I think it's going to be easier to go from 3 kilometers to 3 centimeters. I'm going to do this in 2 steps though. First, I'm going to go to meters, then I'm going to go to centimeters. Well, there's 1,000 meters in a kilometer. So therefore, in 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. 3 kilometers is going to be 3,000 meters. Okay. How many centimeters are in a meter? Well, that's 100. So I need to times by 100. So 3,000 times by 100 is going to give me 300,000. Okay, so we've got a lot of centimeters there. 300,000 centimeters is the same as 3 kilometers. And I need to see how many 150 centimeters fit into that number there. How many of these fit into this length? Well, that's just the same as doing 300,000 divided by 157. This is saying how many 157s fit into 300,000. So now I can put that into my calculator. Gives me a decimal answer, 1,910.82 and so on. I'm just going to put dot, dot, dot. Let's look back at the question. It says how many complete, so full rotations, we don't want decimal, how many complete rotations? Well, I'm just going to take this number here, get rid of the decimal because that's not a full turn. The overall answer should be 1,910. Okay, that's quite tricky, so really well done if you got that one. Okay, we're now going to be looking at working backwards. This time let's read the question. The circumference of this circle is 14 pi centimeters. Find the diameter of this circle. So this time we're given the circumference and we need to work backwards to find the diameter. So to start off with, let's write out the formula of how we would work out the circumference. We're looking to find out what this diameter is, and we know the circumference. Well, if we know the circumference here is 14 pi, I'm going to replace that with the letter C here because I know that bit there. So I know the circumference came out as 14 pi. So I know that pi times the diameter gave us 14 pi. So some of you may spot and know the answer straight away, or you can do it this way. We can see here that we want the diameter to be left on its own because we want D equals. We want to find what the diameter equals. So to get the diameter on its own, we need to do the opposite of what's happening to it. Well, it's being times by pi. So I've got to do the opposite. I'm going to have to divide by pi on both sides. So this side here, we can see 14 pi divided by pi is actually just going to leave us with 14. And here we divided by pi to get rid of the pi, so we've just got diameter on its own. So here we're given the circumference is 14 pi. What's the diameter? Well, the diameter must be 14 centimeters. We've got a little bit at the bottom there. If we know the diameter, can you find the radius? We're remembering again, the radius is just half of that length. So we know the radius is 7 centimeters, so we can half that, okay? So using the example I've just done, you're going to have a go at that yourselves. Can you find the diameter given the circumference? And also, can you find the radius as well? So pause the video, have a go at that. Brilliant, well done for having a go. Let's have a look at what the answer is. So, writing out the formula, circumference equals pi times diameter. Let's have a look at the question. Which bits do I know? Well, this time it's telling me that the circumference is 22 pi. So I'm going to, instead of writing circumference, I'm going to replace it with 22 pi. So let's write that. 22 pi is equal to pi times diameter. Notice nothing else changed on this side. I just replaced the C the circumference with what I knew. I want to get diameter on its own because that's the thing I want to work out. So I need to get rid of this times by pi. Let's do the opposite and divide by pi. And we notice that therefore 22 pi divided by pi leaves us with 22. And on this side here we're left with diameter. That makes sense, doesn't it? Pi times the diameter equals 22 pi. 22 times pi will give us 22 pi. So I know that that is correct. Last bit here though, we did want to work out the radius. Just keep checking in with it so we know the diameter is all the way across is 22. The radius is going to be half of that, isn't it? So the radius is going to be 11. Well done if you got those right. Okay, same sort of thing, just a little bit less obvious because this time our circumference hasn't got a pi symbol in it, it's just a number. So we will definitely have to use a calculator this time. Same thing though, every time we do these sort of questions where circumference is mentioned, we're going to write out the formula. Circumference equals pi times diameter. The question tells me the circumference is 78.5. So replacing the C with 78.5 and everything else stays the same. I want to find out what the diameter is, so I eventually want to get like this, D equals something. Well, what's the difference with what I've got here and what I've got at the bottom? Well, on the right hand side, the D is on its own, and on this side here, it's got a pi with it, so I want to be getting rid of this pi here. How do I do that? Well, at the minute, it's being times by pi. So remember, to get rid of something like that, we've got to do the opposite. So I'm going to have to divide by pi. Whatever I do to one side, I've got to divide it by the other side. Remember, if you haven't got a calculator, we're going to use pi as 3.14. So in my calculator now, I'm typing in 78.5 divided by 3.14 or divided by pi, and that gives me an answer of 25. So I've found the diameter is equal to 25. The question wants me to find the radius, so I need to halve that. The radius is going to be 12.5. Don't forget the units, that's going to be meters. Again, I've done one. Your turn on the right hand side, and then we'll do the solution together. Okay, so let's go through the solution. So again, we're going to write circumference equals pi times by diameter and fill in the bits we know. We know the circumference is 28.26, so I'm going to replace the C, which stands for circumference, with the number 28.26. I want to find out what the diameter is, so I'm aiming for diameter equals, and so I need to get rid of this bit here. The opposite of timesing by pi is dividing by pi, so let's do that to both sides, and then plug that in our calculator. So I'm plugging in 28.26 divide by pi, or divide by 3.14, and that gives me the answer that the diameter is therefore 9 meters. I actually need to find the radius because that's what it says in the question. If I know the diameter, I know the radius is just half of that, so 4.5. Well done if you got that correct. Okay, just 4 quite quick questions to have a go at. Make sure you show the workings like I have done on the previous slide, and make sure you include your units. So pause the video now and have a go at those. Okay, so mark off your answers here. And then we have 2 final challenge questions to finish off today's lesson. So pause the video, have a go at it, and then we'll go through the solution together. Okay, solution, here we go. Let's first read the question. The following triangle and circle have the same perimeter. Perimeter meaning that around the outside. Find the diameter of the circle to 1 decimal place. Okay, so it's saying that the perimeter of the triangle is the same as the perimeter of the circle. So first of all, I'm going to find out the perimeter of each of them, and hopefully that will give us a clue on how to find the diameter, this bit here. Okay, let's remind us that perimeter, remember, is all the way around the outside. So let's first of all do that for the triangle. Well, these little lines here mean that all the sides are the same. So I can write 14 foot there, 14 foot there. So the perimeter, so all the way around the outside, if I started here, I'd walk along that bit there. That's 14 foot. I'd then walk along this side here. So I'd plus 14. And then I'd walk back to where I started, another 14 there. So if I add all those together, the perimeter of that triangle is therefore 42 foot. Brilliant. So I now know the perimeter of the triangle is 42 foot. Okay. I'm now going to look at this side here, the perimeter of the circle. Well, the perimeter of the circle, remember, is the same as circumference. So the perimeter of the circle is the same as circumference. So let's use what we've been doing throughout the lesson to help us with that one. Circumference equals pi times diameter. And we've got to work out what that diameter is. We actually don't know what it is. We've got to try and work it out. So I can't actually help myself there. But that does equal the perimeter of the circle, doesn't it? Because circumference is the same as the perimeter. So I can't put any numbers here, but what I can put is that the perimeter of the circle, if we were to work it out, we would do pi and then we'd times it by the diameter. So we've got a little equation here. And even though pi is a symbol, we do know that that number is about 3.14. So let's write it out again. 42 equals about 3.14 times by diameter. We now have one thing we don't know, and therefore we can find out what it is. Using that algebra, we want to get diameter on its own. So we want to end up with D equals. How are we going to get to that? Well, I need to get rid of this bit here to leave diameter on its own. I need to get rid of the times 3.14. So to get rid of it, we've got to do the opposite of timesing. So that's dividing and divide by that same number. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So divide by 3.14. So on this left-hand side, we're going to do 42 divided by 3.14. We're going to put that in our calculator. That gives us a long decimal, but I'm just going to round it to one decimal place because that's what it's asked for in the question. So that's going to be 13.4. And on this side, the 3.4 divided by 3.4 will give us 1, or I could just leave it as just D on its own like that. So I found out using this equation here that the diameter therefore must be 13.4, and if we want to include the units, that's going to be feet, isn't it? That's what's been in the whole question. Really, really well done if you got that one. Okay, so this is the last question. So for those silver and gold students who want to sort of push themselves a little bit more, very much like the last question. So we've got a rectangle and a circle, and they have the same perimeter. We've got to calculate the value of r. Okay, so using the same sort of thing as the previous question, have a go at this, pause the video, and then we'll go through the solution together. Okay, here we go. Let's go through the solution. So they have the same perimeter. So I'm going to write out that same thing again. So the perimeter of the rectangle is the same as, or is equal to, the perimeter of the circle. Okay, so that little formula is going to help us. If you needed that little bit of prompt to help you start your answer, pause the video now and have a go. If not, just carry on watching. Okay, let's do this bit separately. The first bit I'm going to do is this left-hand side. I'm going to do it in green. Okay, the perimeter of this rectangle. So remember, that's walking all the way around the outside. Let's say I started at this point here. I walked along this side. Well, that's going to be 15. And then I'm going to walk down this length here. Well, that length's going to be the same as the other side. So that's going to be plus 8. I then have to walk along this length here. Well, that's going to be 15. And finally, to get back to where I started, I've got to add that last length, 8. So the perimeter of the circle is going to be 15 plus 8 plus 15 plus 8. So that's going to be 15 plus 8 is 23, and plus another 23, which gives me 46 centimetres. Brilliant. So I can fill in this left-hand side. 46 centimetres is the perimeter of the rectangle. I know that's got to be equal to this bit here, the perimeter of the circle. So let's do that bit next. In blue. Perimeter of the circle, remember, is all the way around the outside. Well, we've got a special name for that. It's the circumference, isn't it? So I can work out the perimeter of that circle by using the circumference formula, which is pi times by diameter. Well, we don't know anything else about this, do we? We don't know the diameter yet because we don't know the radius for sure. So I actually can't fill in any numbers for that. So in this bit here, we've just got to leave it as pi times diameter. We've got a very similar sort of looking formula as we had in the last question. So we've got 46 centimetres has got to be equal to the pi times whatever the diameter of that yellow circle is. Well, I want to find out that diameter because if I find out the diameter, I can then half it to find the radius. So how do I get a diameter on its own? I need to get rid of times by pi. And to get rid of times, I've got to divide. And to get rid of times by pi, I've got to divide by pi. So let's do that on both sides. 46 divided by pi, typing that in my calculator, I get an answer of 14.64. It does go on a little bit, but I'm just going to leave it as 14.64. Calculate the value of r. Well, r is the radius, which is going to be half the diameter. So the diameter is 14.64. The radius, I find that out by dividing it by 2. So you can use your calculator or see if you can do it in your head. You should get the diameter is 7.32. That's 2 decimal places. Not forgetting the units, it's going to be in centimetres. So that's my final answer for that there. Really, really well done if you get those. They're quite challenging. And that leads us to the very end of the lesson.